in Nashville. We are here. It's the NHL Draft with the NHL Awards last night. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going down around the league. All kinds of people here in town. So we thought we have all kinds of different things that we can get into today. And then about an hour ago, Chris MacFarland pulls the trigger on one of the more surprising moves I feel like we've seen from the Avs in the last little bit. Alex Newhook moved from the Colorado Avalanche to the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and prospect Yanni Fairbrother. We are going to get into all of that. We're going to talk about the picks, what we think they might mean. Are they gearing up for another move? We're going to get into Yanni Fairbrother and maybe the little bit of a mystery that is surrounding him and his career right now. But we are going to start here with Alex Newhook. First and foremost, how are you enjoying Nashville so far?
It feels like you can't really separate how you're enjoying Nashville from the part of doing the job. And I will say I enjoy this part of the job. It's a little bit chaotic, but it keeps you on your toes. And so I'm really enjoying Nashville, but it's not for the reasons you think. It's not the honky tonks. It's being here to cover the NHL Draft and awards. And it's the throes of the off season. And so things like this happen, bat of an eye. And it's really exciting to be able to cover it. And it just so happens we get to be in Nashville when it happens.
Right. I would say we did enjoy a little bit of the honky tonk last night. We got to go out on Broadway a bit, so that was
the part I love most is this part right here.
Yes. Yeah, totally. We're getting a nice little mix up. We're getting to enjoy Nashville and the draft to its fullest. No doubt about it. Again, we're seeing a lot of moves all over the NHL, a lot of stuff happening within the Central Division. So the Avs get in on it today. Let's start with, do you want to start with Alex Newhook or do you want to start with what they got in return? Let's start with the return because I feel like there's a little bit less to talk about there. I feel like we're going to have a lot to say about it.
And they're unavoidably going to link back to one another in the context of how we unpack this.
So the Avs move, when you take a step back, you and I were talking about it earlier, right after the deal broke. When you take a step back and really appreciate the fact that the Avs just moved Alex Newhook for a first, a second, and a prospect, like in a vacuum, that right there is an impressive return.
It is.
Did you, when there was, talks about moving Alex Newhook at the deadline, not anything serious, but just people started to float, do you move on from Alex Newhook? He's not really taking that next step. I didn't think that, again, just there's context to 31st, 37th pick, stuff like that, but a first, a second, and a prospect, for me, that's more than what I expected in a return for Newhook.
Well, I think that's where we're going to add some context to what this prospect, for example, really represents, the value that this Fairbrother player really holds. It's a little bit unclear. Yeah. And so it's kind of honestly like in looking at Galchenyuk for Johansson.
Yeah, I've done that so many times.
Jonas Johansson, you did this to me.
I know.
And looking at how Nashville doesn't even sign Galchenyuk, it's like there are some pieces here with this Newhook trade that I think will carry a similar value that might not necessarily be considered the bulk of it. But the picks ultimately in a coveted draft year, the first and second round, I think deeper than that too, are going to have some players that have NHL upside. Obviously, there's a lot to be seen from some of these players, especially the deeper that we go. But in doing our mock draft today, we realized that some of the players we were sitting on when we were getting down to the 30th pick, there are players going into the second round of our mock draft that we felt could be in the first just the same. Yep. And so in evaluating then the 27th to the then 31st, it does feel like this is building towards something different, and it's of similar value in my eyes. Now, there are some players that were in our mock draft, at least near and available around 27, that hold a lot of value. Yeah. So it could be the difference between a couple players if we are now looking at if they give up that 27th pick, for example, and if they give up that 31st pick, we are looking at maybe something a little into the second round. But there were still a lot of options on the table that hold value.
Right. And that to me, because I think you're right. I think there are going to be players there at the end of the first round that are interesting, that could be nice to add to your prospect pool, but it's just odd to picture the Avs after everything that they've kind of done over the last 6 months to get to this point and then suddenly like, ooh, let's get a bunch of draft picks and make those picks. Like, you know what I mean? It just feels like if they're not going to move both of the first, it almost feels like they got an extra first so they can make sure they have one because they want to move something. There's another deal in the works somewhere. let's talk about Fairbrother really fast, because you and I did some just kind of quick digging into Yanni Fairbrother, former third-round pick of the Montreal Canadiens. Started his pro career 2 seasons ago, only played about 20, I believe it was 22 games, picked up about 8 points. Nothing last year. No games played, nothing in the AHL, nothing anywhere else. Again, we're all kind of scrambling here around the All-City house, so we haven't had a chance to dig too far. But yes, again, without much context, Alex Newhook fetched a first, a second, and a prospect. This prospect, I'm really lowering expectations on, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm actually just checking now to see how much this clashed with the COVID years, and maybe why some of those limited games we're seeing. But still, and it's very much the case, some of this is the COVID years that we're seeing these numbers low. But looking at the 21-22 season, it's still a little low. They played more games than that in the full season, and then to have not played last year, I'm genuinely not sure. And I've been keeping an eye out to see if people have an explanation as to why he hasn't played, and I'm still not sure as to why. But you alluded to it before, that it feels like they're building towards something greater, and that's where I think it becomes interesting that they're going to leverage picks to fetch the return that they're hoping for, and we assume it's a player that can get into the Avs lineup immediately. And it's interesting then, we talked about that Alex Newhook alone wasn't able to fetch this player, and we don't know the trade partner and their positional needs to fill. Like, that's part of it. But it is curious to me, because this is obviously, yes, the return for Newhook is 2 picks and a prospect. But I'm just wondering if the next move is to acquire a player, could Newhook have fetched that return?
Right.
And that's where it is really curious to me. And obviously there could be a lot of reasons for that. He might not have been the best stylistic fit for whatever trade partner the Avs might be eyeing right now. But it is really interesting, because it did seem like Newhook and Byram, we just kind of penciled them into the lineup next year, and they were going to work things out in terms of an extension. This comes as a little bit of a surprise. I know he had a difficult sophomore season, but I got the impression that the organization hadn't given up on him by any means.
Yeah. Well, and that to me, again, you know, when I first saw the name, I said, oh, is this another kid who's maybe a year behind where Newhook is, you know, in Fairbrother? Like, or is this maybe like a little bit of like a step beyond like the Ryan Graves for Chris Beagroth thing, where it's like, hey, we got a couple young kids, we're going to swap them, we're going to get some picks, get some whatever. But really seeing that Yanni Fairbrother kind of just feels like a throw-in to make the contracts work, make the numbers work. For me, I really am looking at those 2 picks. And to your point, where I'm going with all of this is, given the way the Avs talked about Alex Newhook, what we saw from him in, again, a sophomore season that you would say was probably a bit of a struggle, but not like bad by any means, it feels weird that they would move on from that for just a couple of, you know, a late first and a second. You have to imagine they're going to be replacing Alex Newhook in a more meaningful way here. Do want to throw in, the Avs did just release their schedule a few minutes ago, the schedule for the season. They will open with 3 straight games on the road, at LA, at San Jose, at Seattle, before opening at home October 19th against the Chicago Blackhawks. So first home game of the year for the Avs will be welcoming in Connor Bedard. So that should be fun. Again, they're keeping the news flowing today. Want to remind you guys that we are brought to you by Backus and Shanker. They've been winning for Colorado families for over 25 years. They don't charge you a thing until they win your case. So you can call them, see if you've even got a case, and nothing out of your pocket until they win the case, win you some money. That's the only time they collect from you. They've won over $1 billion for their clients all over Colorado. Now they have even more locations so they can serve every single neighborhood, including offices in Denver, Aurora, Inglewood, Fort Collins, and more. They have over 30 lawyers on staff and over 100 additional staff members to make sure that you guys are taken care of. They help with all kinds of injury cases that weren't your fault: car accidents, motorcycle, rideshare, pedestrians, trucks, scooters, bikes, you name it. They can even help if you were injured at work. Call 222-2222 to find out if you have a case for free. Backus and Shanker, they're a staple. We've talked about it before. I was watching their ads when I was a little kid. Now we're doing their reads here. They've been around forever. They know what they're doing. 222-2222. Also brought to you guys by Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. I think the rain has stopped back home, like, for an extended period of time, so you can get out to the farmhouse. You can enjoy the nice outdoors. I know they have live music there all summer. All their beers on tap. We have a bunch of their beers on tap at the DNVR bar. They got their Good Company seltzers. Now that it is a little bit nicer, want something maybe a little bit more light, crisp, and refreshing, they've got you covered there. Use the Breck Beer Locator at breckbrew.com to find the nearest store to you that offers all of your favorite Breck brews. Again, breckbrew.com. Use the Breck Beer Locator. DNVR Avalanche podcast breaking news today. We are on the day before the draft. First round kicks off tomorrow, Megan. And the Avs are sending Alex Newhook to the Montreal Canadiens. They get a first, a second, and a prospect back in return. Prospect Yanni Fairbrother, pretty low expectations for him. 31st overall as well as 37th overall. We'll see what the Avs do with those. Let's talk about Alex Newhook. You started getting into it a little bit there near the end. I was really surprised by this deal, not just because we hadn't really heard anything about it, but for what you were alluding to a bit there, Megan. It never felt like it was a question of effort, like it was a question of will. For Alex Newhook, and obviously he wants to be here, but is he putting in the work? It seemed like he checked every box that they were asking him to check. It just didn't come together the way that maybe people thought it would in the first couple of years.
No, and it's tough because the height of his evaluation period comes about this sophomore season, which happens to be like full seasons, if we're truly counting full seasons being played. And that comes about on a horrific season of injuries, some of the most man games lost to any team in the league, alongside others, Montreal being one of them, who suffered an even worse fate with their injuries. And it's not to excuse the lack of progress from Newhook. And just to address a couple things in chat, it does look like Fairbrother, it was a knee injury that kept him out of last season. And I alluded to before that some of those low numbers for games played were during COVID time. So it's possible on the whole that it's bad timing in the quick assessment of Fairbrother. He's played so few games in his pro career, in part because of COVID, and then the season where he was looking to play a full, complete season experiences a knee injury. So health is a concern, but it might not be as mysterious as we opened the show with, because we are processing this in real time, and there's information coming to us quite like that. And then the other part of it is the only reason Newhook and Byram are grouped together in this discussion is because they were RFAs. They're two entirely different players.
Right.
And talking about Newhook, this last season, we've talked about the context of why he didn't meet expectations a lot of times on the show before.
I want to just interrupt you real fast to interject that I thought he had a really good rookie season. Like when you go, I thought the expectations on him for that rookie year, by the time we got to the halfway point, were, I don't want to use the word unfair because my dad has told me from the time I was 3 years old, life isn't fair. So I don't want to use that word, but I just always thought the expectations for him were overblown. I thought he had a great rookie year. I thought the disappointment was the sophomore year. So I just wanted to add that little bit of context too. People saying that he wasn't good his rookie year, I disagree with.
No, and I think that's where the expectation feels like it fell below in the sophomore season, because he set this standard.
That's a great point.
In his rookie season that people came to expect then in his next year. And that's where things became difficult, because he played in one of the best constructed forward groups on that 2022 team. And that's not to say that's the reason for his success, but it was a lot easier for him to have a better regular season.
Right.
He was sheltered in the postseason.
More stability, line mates.
Stability with a capital S. I mean, that's the entire problem of last year. Cale Makar talked about it last night, and he looked to Mikko Rantanen as someone that he had a lot of respect for because of what a grind it is to play 82 games and not have consistent line mates. That's true of Alex Newhook. And again, it's not to make excuses, but
it's context. It's
second year, that makes a lot of sense. And it does, I understand the contrast between his rookie season into his sophomore is a tough pill to swallow, but that, and I don't want to say development because we've talked about it. It's like the National League, it's not a development league.
Yep.
I understand that. It's just, this is a player who still has runway left to show. And I believe that he has a pretty good head on his shoulders. Now, some of his shortcomings are actually linked to confidence. And so it's something that I think about a lot with Newhook, that he says all the right things. I think he has a pretty good headspace. But you can see when it creeps into his game sometimes, he's quick to defer. He doesn't take the shot.
Yeah.
And
double clutches.
You see where the confidence sometimes, there's room to improve there, right? Mm-hmm. That is something you can work with a player on, though. And that's where again, we've alluded to, I don't think the organization had quite given up on him, but it seems like they're building towards something bigger that's going to have an immediate impact. And it all comes back to this vision and trying to maximize the window right this second. Because I think Newhook, if you ask the Avs organization today, they still believe he would be a player. I just think they're a little unsure of when he's going to be that guy, and they need that guy right now.
And I think the other thing, too, that this says to me is that, not that they're maybe reevaluating where his ceiling is, but like you're saying there, like, we don't know when you're going to be that guy, and we don't know if the guy that you will eventually be is going to be like a guy worth waiting for, you know? Again, I want to go back to a little bit to his rookie year. The 2022, the Avs are on the run to the Stanley Cup. You're getting some injuries into that top six. Nazem Kadri breaks his hand. And I remember there was a lot of conversation of, why aren't the Avs playing Alex Newhook there? Well, they can't trust him. He's not good enough. And it's like, whoa. This is the kid's first year in the league, and you're asking him to step into a second-line center role on a Stanley Cup run, one of the most pivotal roles for a Stanley Cup winning team, especially the way that season ended for the Avs with Nazem Kadri, huge clutch goal in Game 4. You were asking Alex Newhook, fans were asking Alex Newhook to step into a very, very prominent role on that team. And I didn't once question why Jared Bednar didn't do that. It made perfect sense. Here's a young kid who's had a good season. He's not ready for the second line center. What was that look?
I was chuckling because of the way the Seattle series ended on a play with Newhook and Myers at the net front, accidentally having a puck off their bodies. Now, that's unfortunate luck. Right. But where I'm going with is, there's a reason those types of young players in playoff situations, especially desperation elimination games, don't have as much trust. And it is not necessarily a reflection of the player they even are presently or are going to be. It's reliability. Mm-hmm. And that becomes of the utmost importance in a playoff series, that Newhook, even in his rookie season, as good as he was in the regular season, was sheltered for very reasonable reasons.
Yeah, right. And it's a great point. And so I felt like people took that. Okay, well, they didn't play him there. They won their cup. They got away with it. But now he's the 2C.
That's a big leap.
And that's a big leap. And I just always felt like people glossed over the fact how big of a leap that was, how young he was. And I've even seen it a couple times in the chat here, the comparison to Tyson Jost. I think you and I both like Tyson Jost as an individual. I think the role that he settled into in the NHL is fine. He's going to have a very long NHL career, Tyson Jost. So this is like no disrespect to him, but like Alex Newhook is already a more productive player than Tyson Jost has ever been. So I've never liked that comp. And I think that there is a chance here. I'm not banking on this if I'm Montreal, but I think there's still a chance that he gets there, gets to play for Martin St. Louis, and can find his game a bit with a core that is much, much, much more in line with his age. Cole Caulfield, Kirby Dach, now you have Alex Newhook. I know I'm missing one. Nick Suzuki and Juraj Slafkovsky.
I don't know where he's at in his development too, if he's NHL ready.
Slafkovsky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's a part of that young core.
He's a part of that young core. So now Alex Newhook gets to be part of like the equivalency of the Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Gabe Landeskog. He gets to be part of that, where he will eventually be one of the older guys on the team. He'll have some NHL experience. He's got a Stanley Cup. I think there's a chance that he could go on to have a very productive career in Montreal. And I think we could look back on this in 5 years and say, yeah, a first and a second, that's about right for who he turned into, even though right now it feels a little bit of an overpay on Montreal's side.
I guess.
For who Alex Newhook is right now today, it feels a little rich
in seeing that there is potential for Fairbrother to be a prospect that they can utilize, even if he's buried in the American League in the years to come, they still need depth.
You need players down there. That's always one part that people forget. When you see some of these...
joke, like, Sean Burns needs a D partner when he plays for the Eagles for 10 games, and then he gets, I'm just kidding.
But I mean, like, for real, you run an organization that's got multiple levels to it. You have to have players that fill out in those spots. So you're not wrong.
To answer your question, then maybe.
Right.
Maybe it is an overpay.
Right.
And
I'm not saying by much, but I think a little.
I like where this is going in terms of reframing the value of Newhook in all of this to Montreal. They are seeing a player that they want to grow with because Newhook's going to grow up in their core now alongside some of their young players. And I think they have the time to do it because their window is not, well, I don't know if I should say it's not right now, but I think it's fair to say, honestly, they've had a lot of injuries that have
expect them to be a lot
been unbearable, but I think they're still building.
Yeah. No, and it's, I like what the way that you just phrased that there about Alex Newhook gets to be part of their window, because I do think, unfortunately, here is one area where I do think he's comparable to Tyson Jost. I just think it's bad timing to be a high-end prospect for the Avs right now. As silly as that sounds, maybe not a high-end prospect, but like, a prospect trying to crack that lineup regularly, it's a really tough era to be that kind of player with this organization.
I feel that way about Ben Myers. I think he could be an NHL player right now full-time somewhere, but it's hard for him to stick in the Avs lineup because they need him to be more NHL ready, and he still needs some more reps. I don't know what it looks like for a Ben Myers type even.
Right. And you and I talk about it so much. The NHL is not a development league, but there are some organizations that, again, they're still not developing players, but they're a lot more comfortable with the growing pains and the mistakes. The Montreals, the Anaheims, Arizona these last couple of years, Chicago this upcoming year. Like, those are all teams that can live with growing pains. The Avs don't have time for growing pains. They're right in the middle of the window. Nathan McKinnon's contract is finally rolling over as of like 4 days from now. He will be the highest paid player in the league. It is no longer, this unbelievable deal. You don't have time to wait around for that stuff if you're the Avs. You need players that are in your lineup that are being effective. And one thing Jared Bednar talks about a lot is he loves players that don't surprise him, that he knows what he's getting out of them, and he knows what to expect from their effort, where they're going to be. Again, the Newhook and Ben Myers goal, I believe he said it was in Game 7. That's bad luck, but there's probably, without looking at it, 3 or 4 things that went into that on that shift that led to that.
Oh, yeah.
Jared Bednar does not like having guys out there he doesn't know what he's going to do.
No, not in that situation specifically, because that is not who you want tasked with net front coverage in an elimination game. And that's not to blame squarely Myers or Newhook for either. They just shouldn't be in those situations, and the Avs just didn't have options. And that's where we get to the side then of evaluating the Avs in all of this. And I'm starting to see and feel them get really serious. It's not that I doubted this or believed differently, but I'm starting to see it now.
It feels more aggressive than I thought.
The Johansson, that not being a player that I specifically had looked at, and we talked about it before the show, how this is kind of interesting because of Kevin Hayes.
Yeah.
Was Kevin Hayes...
I want to get there, so don't.
All right, I won't jump ahead.
Yeah,
I won't jump ahead. But, all right, just focusing solely then on Johansson for a second, that says to me they're trying to get serious because they need a player who can play right now. Because we don't know what Johansson even looks like in a couple years. We don't even know what he looks like next season. But there's a little bit more of a history with Johansson to go off of. That
track record,
whether or not he is utilized full-time in the 2C position, you feel pretty good with him at 3C if it is some kind of flex situation. And now, in what they've done with Newhook, I'm curious to see where this is going.
Yeah, I agree with that too, where I'm not ready to even, not that we assign grades to trades, but I'm actually not even fully ready to judge this deal yet, because Megan, this just feels to me like there is more stuff coming. I just can't imagine that, whether it's a big blockbuster deal or if it's more tweaks, bringing in middle six guys, whatever, I just can't imagine that this is where the Avs are wanting, their transactions to be done for the week. I have to imagine that at least one or multiple of the assets they brought in the last couple days are going to be on the move again. I guess today, not the last couple days. They're not moving Ryan Johansson, but so that's the other layer to all of this is I think people like the trade right now because the Avs got something back, but I would tell everyone, pump the brakes a little bit because I think there's probably more to come on this. And even if not by means of a trade, does this now mean you can bring back JT Compher?
Oh, to clear cap.
Well,
yeah, they would have had to.
Yeah, so they would have had to give Newhook somewhere between 1.5 to 2.5, somewhere in that range. So are you now saying, well, we're not going to mess around with Alex Newhook? Because that was a question that we had the other day. If you bring back JT Compher, what are you doing with Alex Newhook?
And have we been too conservative in the 1.5 to 2 mil estimate? Is there something we don't know?
Pierre-Luc Dubois to the Kings.
Confirmed it's finally happening.
Yep.
Okay, the return for the Jets actually seems crazy if it's what I was seeing speculated.
I'll look at it.
Okay.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I'll try to find it. Because there's another thing that Arif Dean from Mile High Sports had floated to me and JJ privately the other day. He just tweeted out today. Now with that move, and I guess I need to see, wow, it was a sign and trade 8-year deal. 8-year extension, $8.5 million. Pierre-Luc Dubois sign and trade.
Wow.
So they get Dubois on an 8-year deal. So after all of he's only going to play for Montreal, it's LA, and it's an 8-year deal. That's not bad. That's great center depth for them there. And I'm trying to find what the return was. But now LA needs to move some cap space. They need to clear the decks a bit. What had you seen for the return?
I follow.
Oh, really?
But more. Two other players.
Because if they cleared the decks that way, then
it was like 3 players.
What I was about to say.
I wasn't sure if a couple of them were American League still.
Either way, there are going to be some teams out there that are going to need to make some money work, need to move some things around. So I think the Avs could be, encroaching in on maybe some of those moves. And Pierre-Luc Dubois, that's probably the biggest move so far of the week. I have a feeling that you're going to see some dominoes fall behind that because, again, in an already bad free agency center market, another center that was up for trade is now off the block.
That's what makes the JT conversation interesting too. Is
the JT conversations?
JT conversations, because there has to be a lot of teams extremely interested in him. More so.
Yeah, I believe the CHGO guys were saying earlier on their show that they've heard somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 16 teams are actively pursuing JT Compher. Man, it is. We talk every year about, it's going to be a crazy draft. It's going to be a crazy week. Free agency. This has been one of the more chaotic draft week lead-ups that I can remember in the last few years. I mean, just between all the different deals that we've seen go down, and there's still a lot of speculation out there about more that are to come. This has definitely been one of the craziest ones. But I did think if the Avs don't end up making another move with these picks, but bring back JT Compher, that to me was the additional move that they were wanting to make.
Right. It's interesting.
So then you'd be running McKinnon, Johansson, Compher, probably Ben Myers. I mean, if you want to bring in Jonathan Drouin.
I'm only chuckling because I think back to training camp last year, and I think they like Myers, but I don't think they trust him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Bednar trusts him yet. I think Bednar likes him, but I don't think he trusts him yet. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if they would give him the 4th line center position. I think they might feel more comfortable with him at wing for a little longer.
Sure. Okay.
They still should utilize him on their 4th line, though. Myers, no matter what. But I'm just not sure what.
Would you feel comfortable with that?
Is in the middle there.
Would you feel comfortable with that center depth? Because when I said it out loud, I was kind of.
I wouldn't feel comfortable with Myers being the 4th line option.
I'm sorry, for 1, 2, 3.
Oh, 1,
McKinnon,
2, 3?
Johansson, Compher. I guess it all comes down to what you get out of Johansson.
Is Erod coming back? Because then that's a third option that between those 3, and with Mikko Rantanen playing center as needed, then I actually feel really comfortable. That's just a lot of options But I'm a bit unsure because both Johansson, there we go. I don't know what has happened. And Comfer were playing up a little bit in the 2C role. And
totally.
I think Johansson is competent to do it, but I have some concerns. And it's necessary then to have a backup option. But if they're both kind of this second, third line flex centerman, you're looking at two of a very similar role filled.
That's a great point. How many?
And for what cost? Are we then paying our third line centerman asterisk beside it $4 million plus? Like both will probably make comparable to that. That's a lot of money tied up in the middle six.
I don't know if you really want to, when you're listing all those names off there as kind of like a half in, half out option at 2C. I don't know if you want too many of those where it's just like they can play wing, they can play center. We don't really know. I don't know.
It just can't be for JT Compher money. I think that's the concern. Like,
yeah.
I want JT Compher in the Avs forward group to play either 2C or 3C between Johansson. I think it's fabulous. The problem is the price point for both those players will be a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, it would be hard to bring back a guy like JT Compher for a higher dollar figure than what you're paying Ryan Johansson. Not that I'm saying they wouldn't do it, but it would just feel not great.
It would be exactly for the same reason we just alluded to. It's the half in, half out kind of thing, unless one was making a little less than the other. But
right. I don't know. I mean, that's just what makes this deal so hard for me to like fully evaluate right now and even kind of wrap my head around, because this
plan?
Doesn't I would just love to know what's next, whether they're keeping it, keeping the picks. Maybe there's two guys they really like. I don't know. You were talking about it again before we got on the air, and maybe even when we've been on the air. There is going to be some value in and around that area. So those picks aren't throwaways.
No.
They're first-round picks.
Great point about what the context of this draft specifically and it being so active around this draft means. It's specific to this year because of how deep this draft is.
And it makes me wonder, what you talked a little bit about with like the if they are out there trying to make another deal, why didn't they just make a deal with them, with Newhook? And I don't know, maybe it's one of those things where 27 and 31 are more valuable than what Alex Newhook would have brought in return by himself. I just don't know.
Maybe it's positional. They're like, we're targeting a defenseman. There's a couple that we project will be available around that point. We need that defensive depth more than we need Alex Newhook right now in our forward group.
So it's going to be really interesting. Like I said, the what comes next, I think, is really what is going to end up making or breaking this deal
100%
long term. Because again, if Alex Newhook continues to grow and can kind of become, somewhere in the range of 40 to 60 points, for the Montreal Canadiens, I think a first and a second and then a throw-in prospect is about right.
They're taking a little bit of a chance on him.
Yeah, absolutely. But if the Avs can spin these assets into more, use that money that you now don't have to give to Alex Newhook to bring somebody in free agency who you think moves the needle a little bit more, I think you have to kind of lump that all into this deal.
Absolutely, because I think they can more easily and readily do that. We can see that realized in the immediate for the Avs side of things. The Newhook side is going to take a little bit of time to see, but the Avs side of it will hopefully have some answers and clarity soon what they're planning to do with this.
We might need to go out again tonight and just see what kind of chatter we can find going up and down Broadway here.
Remember when I told you I saw Hunwick's brother?
Oh my God. All right. Before this story goes any further.
It was.
You're lucky I don't walk off the show right now. I get a text from Megan last night trying to find us at a different bar. She goes, "Hey, we're here. We'll come find you." But I did just see Matt Hunwick's brother. I was like, I couldn't pick Matt Hunwick out of a crowd. And you just identified his brother in a crowded-ass Nashville bar.
For the same agency that Johansson and Compher are represented by. There's an office.
That doesn't change you recognizing him on site.
Located in Colorado. Because he looks like his brother, and his brother played in Colorado. But he's representing some players at the draft. I promise there was something relevant. This is where this was going.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I don't know who yet, but that's where it's just like you think of chatter we're absolutely right boots on the ground in the heart of this. We should try to genuinely see
I was going to say,
what people are saying.
I say it as a half joke. We did go out last night. We had a great time here in Nashville. It's super fun. I'm not a big country music person myself, but even I find quite a bit to be enthralled with here. I think it's a fun scene. But if we're going to do that, we may need to chug some AG1 to make sure that we are bulked back up. I actually did throw a couple of little travel packs in my bag.
That's so smart.
Yeah, we'll see. I hope I get to some healthy drinks at some point this trip. We had some BioSteel yesterday, so we kicked it off. So now I actually should go make myself an AG1 after this. Really, my wife and I, we've started drinking this stuff pretty much every day. My wife is on it at least 5 days a week. Nice Kevin Weeks video. We're not coffee drinkers, so it gives us that nice boost in the morning. I really do feel, I just feel a little bit better, a little bit more aware. I mention it all the time. It's a serving of your fruits, your veggies, all that stuff right there in one scoop. As someone who grew up kind of a picky eater, things that are, drinks that are green have always kind of scared me off. I actually enjoy the taste of AG1. It doesn't taste like lawn clippings or anything like that. Immune system boosters, vitamins, all that stuff is right there in your first scoop. And again, one of my ultimate testaments to it were last year, Rudo and I both come down with a very similar illness on parade day. I was drinking AG1 sometimes twice a day during that. I bounced back in about 5 days. Rudo was down for about 2 weeks. So, look, I'm no mathematician here, but I don't know. I also don't know if that would be math that's adding that up. But Athletic Greens, go to athleticgreens.com/avalanche, and they are going to make it easy for you guys. They're going to give you one free 1 year supply of immune-supporting vitamins and 5 free travel packs, which, like I said, I threw in my bag, brought with me, just to be able to throw in some water. athleticgreens.com/avalanche, and they'll get you taken care of over there. Like I said, you're going to get the free 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamins, vitamin D, and 5 free travel packs when you go to athleticgreens.com/avalanche. One of my favorite partners of ours, and they've been with us now for a long time. We're also brought to you guys by Illegal Pete's. I don't think there's any Illegal Pete's out here in Nashville.
I actually don't know. Yeah.
I would need to look, but there is one right down the street from the DNVR bar, and they've now got an extended happy hour for the summer. I know AJ and Rudo are going to have a 4-hour show going tomorrow. So, for the draft, go on over to Illegal Pete's, get your happy hour, get some drinks, get some great food, a burrito, a bowl, quesadillas, all that good stuff. I think their nachos are really good there. I think you and I were talking about this once.
Yes.
I like their non-burrito items a lot at Illegal Pete's.
I like the bowls.
I like the bowls. I like the nachos. They're really good place. Grab that. Head on down to the DNVR bar after, watch the show, and then just go right back to Illegal Pete's because happy hour will probably still be going. You can get more food, finish your night off with another drink. They have locations all over Colorado, so you can find them there. But like I said, if you're coming down to the DNVR bar, budget in a little bit of extra time, stop at Illegal Pete's. They are great friends of ours, and it's nice having them so close because we take way too much advantage of having them so close to the bar. And lastly, we are brought to you guys by Shady Rays. I was hoping our Shady Rays would get here before this trip.
I did think it would be fun for us to wear them around Nashville.
Yeah, I was going to say just constantly. But shadyrays.com, use the code DNVR. You're going to get 50% off 2 pairs of polarized sunglasses so you can try the shades that over 250,000 people have rated 5 stars. Megan and I talk about it every time we do this read. I worked in the sunglass industry, the eyewear industry for a long time. I always hated how anything that looked remotely good on your face was crazy expensive, and anything that wasn't crazy expensive was just terrible quality. Shady Rays has found a way to bridge that. Affordable glasses. They look great. They last a long time. And if you break them, drop them, crack them, whatever, they will replace them for you. I believe we had someone write in last week that said they lost theirs and they went into Shady Rays and they had them replaced. So they're great to deal with. I've been into their brick and mortar store in the Park Meadows Mall down in Lone Tree. They're all super nice. They're big sports fans. They know who DNVR is, all that good stuff. You can try everything on. before you go to the website to order it. So check out Shady Rays either in person, or if you can't get into their store in Park Meadow in the Park Meadows Mall in Lone Tree, go to shadyrays.com. Use that code DNVR to get half off 2 pairs of polarized sunglasses. Jesse Montano, Meghan Angley, Sean DePaz running the board for us here in Nashville. It's been a crazy last 24 hours, and I do want to stop to give a special shout out to Sean because he was not supposed to produce our show. He had other stuff going on, but he came to the rescue for us. So big shout out to him. Thank you for making sure that we were able to get this out, because the Avs are just throwing them at us right now. We just got to stay on top of all this. But so, like, Megan, let's start winding this down, but let's run through a couple of the other things that have been going on. And I want to start with Kevin Hayes. You were talking a little bit about his kind of comparable to Ryan Johansson and that whole deal. Kevin Hayes to the St. Louis Blues in exchange for a 6th-round pick, but there's a couple more layers to this.
Yeah, it's actually, there's 2 similar players side by side, very close in age. And the price point is also close, though, recognizing that Johansson is a year younger and is getting paid just a little bit more, $500,000 more. The other part of it, too, is the health concerns surrounding Johansson. That kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It provides more question marks around Johansson's fit. It's just like, would that have been a player that the Avs could have considered for Colorado in Hayes? Because this is so similar.
I definitely think they did.
And what the Avs give up to orchestrate Johansson coming to Colorado would have been, I don't know, I don't want to disparage Alex Galchenyuk, but they give up a pick in acquiring Lars Eller. And honestly, in looking back at the Georgiev trade, like, I'm getting shades of what they might be building up to do in getting some picks from the Newhook trade to what they did to get Georgiev. And I'm just wondering what they have up their sleeves and then how they plan to turn this around, because they might be feeling like they need to hold on to some of these picks then, and looking at just these 2 recent transactions and seeing that they've given up a couple. That is what makes the Johansson trade perhaps more favorable, is they just allow Galchenyuk, who is going to hit free agency anyways, to be a part of that deal. They get Nashville to retain. That brings that price down to this now comparable Kevin Hayes price point.
This is a player that Kevin Hayes, I actually thought was maybe on the Avs radar at deadline, because they have liked Kevin Hayes in the past. They tried to pursue him when he was a free agent. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised to have it confirmed that they looked into this before deciding to go ahead with the Ryan Johansson thing. Personally, I like the gamble on Ryan Johansson better than the one on Kevin Hayes, because at least for Ryan Johansson, you'd be like, well, he had an injury last year. 2 years ago, he had one of the most productive seasons of his career. He had a down year this last year with the injury. Kevin Hayes just kind of feels like he's slid a little bit. Like you said, he's a year older. The contract goes a year longer. Because that's the other thing with Ryan Johansson. You were out for some of the stuff last week when we were talking about it. Let's say this year's a disaster for the Avs and Johansson. It's 2 years.
That's where the 3rd year on Hayes perhaps is also the difference maker then.
Totally.
In these 2 options. And I think the thing with Johansson that is interesting is probably a concern for both players, though, with an injury of that nature, even once healed, is speed. And I think that's where the term for both these players, like the 2 over 3, might actually hold a lot of value in the eyes of the Colorado Avalanche, and what it took to acquire each. It might have made more sense to let Alex Galchenyuk, who was on the brink of free agency anyway, go than part with yet another pick. And I think all of these 100%. Things put together justify it. And in seeing, too, Johansson so close in proximity to that productive season, there is some hope that there's more upside here than what might be possible for Hayes. Because you talked about like predictability in Bednar earlier, and we probably know what we'd be getting in Hayes in Colorado. But with Johansson, we have an idea of what we'll be getting. There can be times where maybe his game is a little quieter than you would like, but there's a possibility it will be louder. And I think that's maybe the excitement in Johansson, is there's just the tiniest bit of gamble, but it's not the biggest risk.
Well, and like, even if you had to worst case scenario, buy him out after this 1 year. Like if it went that bad, the injuries come back and all that stuff, it's a super easy buyout. Again, I would
It's
be
just
really
one
surprised
more
if they
year.
went that way. Right.
It would be easier to pawn that off on another team.
Exactly. But for those reasons, for really kind of like the behind the scenes reasons, I like the Johansson deal better than the Hayes deal. But I'm with you; these are pretty comparable players, and the Avs didn't have to give up a pick for it. We were on the red carpet yesterday for the NHL Awards. We were able to talk to Cale Makar before. We have that interview coming up for you here in just a few. Megan, the only other thing that I really wanted to get into today, just real quick on your thoughts, because it does affect a Central Division team. Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno going to the Chicago Blackhawks. Are they going to be like better than what they are wanting themselves to be? These are getting to be some weird moves for Chicago at this point.
This is a weird comparable, but hopefully you'll be with me on this one. But I think back to Detroit last offseason, and they made moves that, on paper, they're undeniably better, but it didn't come together in the regular season.
Yeah.
And so I kind of have that same feeling about Chicago presently. Like, obviously, Bedard's a completely different conversation, but I still feel like, yes, they are now undeniably better on paper, but it takes a little more than that for things to come together. It takes a little bit of time, truthfully. And it's unclear to me where Taylor Hall is at, because we know
why doesn't anybody want this dude?
We know what he plays a brand of hockey that I don't know how to explain it without using the word. It's oriented in self at times, and he can be really good by himself. But that's where a team like Chicago, which is now kind of in flux, needs cohesion. And I'm curious to see how that'll actually come together just with the type of player that Taylor Hall is.
Yeah. He's getting to be weird because he's almost like entering into the Dougie Hamilton realm where I don't know why people don't want this player. Like, he's a good player. He's productive, all that stuff, but
you have to wonder if it weren't for Boston needing to shed cap space, if they would have been perfectly happy to keep him.
Which I did feel a little bit bad for him because he made a big deal out of that last year that he wanted to go to Boston. That was like where he wanted to sign, and it lasted 1 year. They had a historic season, all-time flame out in the first round, and that's about it. All right, I think that's most of what we've got for right now. It's 2:55 Central Time, so we'll see what happens in the next 30 minutes. As soon as we end this show, I'm sure they'll do something. Megan, like I said, we talked to Cale Makar yesterday. We're going to go ahead and play the full 6-minute interview here to kind of end the show. Before you and I get out of here, did you have any favorite part of what Cale said yesterday? Anything that he called out in particular, or not really? He was super generous for this time. He was great.
No, he was. And in totality, I think what I liked is how he talked about the window for the Avs and how he even used the words 5 to 10 years in terms of how open this window is, but also the urgency to capitalize on it now. He alluded to, when talking about Johansson, more to be done. And I find that to be very interesting now. I doubt that he knew this resulted in Newhook being traded the very next day, but it is interesting to see a player affirm that they did need to do more beyond just Johansson to be as competitive as he's hoping for them to be. I loved the answer about the Nuggets parade and how the guys were texting each other, we need...
while they're watching
You know what I loved too is he stopped himself right as he was about to say, we need to do this again. He just said something like, we need to, it motivates us.
Yeah.
It's almost like he didn't want to quite jinx it by fully saying that part out loud.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated the excitement that's building, because it's not just Cale Makar that's experiencing that excitement building. And it was really nice to see that. I don't want to say there were positives that came out of this last season, but there's perspective. I think now that they've had some time away from the conclusion of this season, he's processing it a lot better, and it's turned into something productive.
The way he kind of processed and talked through, the last season and all that stuff was one thing that jumped out to me. And then the last thing I'll say, without giving away too much of the interview, I tried to leave the door open for Erik Johnson kind of coming back, and Cale Makar pretty much shut that down and basically was like, yeah, we've already said our goodbyes. So I was trying, Avs PR is standing right there. I was trying to tiptoe around I'm not going to make any assumptions. And I actually thought he was going to give me you never know what happens. We'll see. But Cale Makar definitely made it sound like Erik Johnson's time in Colorado is officially over. So we'll leave you guys with that again. Jesse Montano, Meghan Angley here in Nashville. We got Sean DePaz run the board for us today. So we appreciate you guys all listening. Again, we may be back for another emergency something here a little bit later. Draft tomorrow. We'll have all kinds of coverage for you guys here. We'll have the live 4-hour show going on back home with AJ and Rudo, so make sure you guys are tuning into that. And then Meghan and I will be bringing you a ton of content before the draft, during the draft, and after the draft here at the All-City House and down at Bridgestone Arena. Thank you guys so much for listening, and please enjoy the Cale Makar interview. How much different has this offseason been for you versus last year? Where, I mean, I think you guys have already had more time off this summer than you did all last year.
Yeah, it feels so weird already. I feel like we've been off forever, to be honest with you. So I was just touching on it with Peter, but it's nice to have that little break. It's almost blessing in disguise for this year. Obviously, you never want to lose, and we wanted to obviously win it again this year, but to have a little bit of extra time, I think, helped guys a lot for sure.
By the end of it, kind of what you just mentioned, how much was that mental grind just like getting to you guys where it's like, we got to come up for air at some point here?
Yeah, I think obviously we're just getting hit with punches left and right the whole year with injuries and never having our full team. And that's not an excuse or anything, but it's definitely such a mental grind on guys, especially a guy like Mikko who plays all 82 games and he's playing with a different line every single night. So you never have that consistency, and when you don't find that, it kind of sputters out of the gate a little bit, I feel like. So no, for us, obviously we wanted more success, but at the end of the day, you can't look at it like that anymore. I think for us, we got to use this to our advantage, and we want to be competitive for 5-10 years. So we got to make sure we utilize this time now.
Does it maybe feel like a little bit of extra, not necessarily motivation, but now that you guys kind of had the disappointment, maybe people are starting to count you guys out already? Is that a little bit more fuel going into next year?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the way that I look at it, obviously we got another big piece in Ryan Johansson here. Hopefully that'll help the group a lot, and we still need more pieces to get to that level. And I think this year, I think a lot of guys are really excited because I think we're going to do everything we can to hopefully to get to that next level again, and I think guys are excited.
So you just mentioned Ryan Johansson, just playing against him. What's something that maybe you can say about him, the way he plays, that the average person can't tell or doesn't know just from watching him?
Yeah, he's got that edge to his game. Like he's got that kind of chippiness, and he'll kind of hit you in those like weird areas a little bit. And every team kind of wants a guy like that to a certain extent. And I think for us, the one thing I noticed too is like he's really good with face-offs, so he can snap them back pretty well. And those guys are always invaluable to everybody. So I'm excited to see how he fits in the team because I think he can kind of go all around our lineup. So I'm excited to see where we place him. But yeah, excited to meet him.
They said pulling those draws straight back isn't bad for you, eh?
Yeah, no, like when guys go in face-offs on the back end.
Yeah, for sure. So getting to just kind of you, this is your third straight year being up for this award. I know you don't typically like to talk about it much, but have you stopped at any point and been, just kind of thought about the fact that 3 years in a row you're up for top defenseman in the NHL?
Yeah, I haven't really thought about it like that, to be honest. Personally, I still feel like I just haven't got to that thing where I feel comfortable and actually being up for these individual awards yet. I think this year I don't know if it's my place at the moment, but obviously I'm just super honored to be here, and anytime you get to represent your team on any level, it's amazing. So that's kind of how I look at it.
You guys had the COVID awards 2 years ago. You were in Tampa right in the middle of the finals last year. Are you able to soak it in a little bit more this time around?
Yeah, it'll be nice. I'm just kind of just looking forward to enjoying it. Obviously, it sounds like they're going to have a really good production, having a bunch of country artists and stuff, and Derek's hosting it. So it should be fun. I think they'll do a really good job, and hopefully make it a lot of fun for guys.
Obviously, nothing is set in stone. There's still a lot that can happen, but I just want to talk to you a little bit about Erik Johnson. He was with the organization for so long, and like I said, it's still up in the air, but just what has he meant to you in kind of the early stages of your career, helping you get acclimated to the league and stuff?
Yeah, he's been there my whole career at Denver at least, and yeah, it's obviously an unfortunate one, and that's just some of the bad side of the business. People have to make tough decisions if teams want to get a little bit better in certain areas, and I love EJ so much. He's one of my best friends on the team, and you're really going to miss him, and he's just his character and his competitiveness especially, and then you look at just how lighthearted he is off the ice and the communicator that he is in the room too. He's definitely a big personality that you're losing. So it's going to be, you can't look at another guy to just fill that role because he's just such a good guy. But yeah, that'll be a tough one.
And the last one, I'll let you get out of here, but Denver Nuggets obviously win the NBA championship a week ago, I don't know what it was at this point. Yeah. How cool is it for you guys? You guys win last year, get to see them win this year. Just how nice is it for the city and just to kind of be a part of all that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever been more motivated to win another one. Like, honestly, after watching that, I was so excited. I watched the final, like all the finals, and just to see them win, and like I think it just sounds like they have just a really good group of guys too, and that doesn't always come along. So to have a guy like Jokic and then Murray and Gordon, it's crazy to see, and so it was so cool watching that, and then being able to watch the parade. We guys texting each other that we won it. We're like get motivated pretty much. So yeah, it definitely gets the juices going. That's for sure.
That's funny. You think about it in terms of like, oh, we saw Vegas win. Like you guys were seeing Nuggets, different sport, but it's like, no, we got to do this again.
Yeah, just seeing the hype and everybody was how up everybody got after they won it. It makes you want to do it again. You want to relive that moment again, and it's just I think guys are excited for the grind.
Cale, I really appreciate your time, man. Good luck tonight.
No worries. Thank you.
Thanks, man.